Welcome to a new episode of Morgana Radio, where I, your host, interview the world's most fascinating thought leaders on money, love, and magic. And fasten your seatbelts because we have got a really exciting guest for you today. And Rosie Aiello is different from anybody that I've interviewed before, and her story is going to blow you away. Rosie left 25 years of marriage in this crazy international escape to save her daughter and herself from domestic abuse. It's like an episode of 24, all the danger, all the things that could go wrong. And she reinvented herself in the United States from zero and became a best-selling author and this award-winning entrepreneur. And her whole mission in life now is kindness. And she's going to be sharing with us her journey and why kindness is essential, not just for personal relationships, but for your self-worth and your success. So welcome, Rosie. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Morgana, I've been excited. I've been looking forward to this one.
So can you walk us through your story that I so poorly represented just a minute ago?
Well, you did. And I thought, God, has she read my stuff already? Because when you said some of the things that we had to go through to get here was quite amazing. But just to give your listeners a little bit of a background, I was in the Middle East for almost 25 years. I was about 12 years in Saudi Arabia and about 12 years in Lebanon. So about 25 years total. And my husband's Lebanese Christian, my ex-husband's Lebanese Christian. And while I was there, really from the get-go, it was abusive, but I didn't know that. Morgana, I was married 18 years before I even knew I was in an abusive situation because I was high functioning before. I was rising in corporate finance in Silicon Valley before I moved to the Middle East. So, and you don't expect, this thing, you don't expect the man you love, the man who's going to be your husband is going to start abusing you and putting you down. It's just like, so it's this constant trying to rationalize it and deny it. But really, I just thought I wasn't good enough, right? You're not good enough. That's what he told me. So I believed him after, decades of it.
And there's also this thing when you are this high functioning woman, we have this idea, well, that happens to other people. That doesn't happen to me. And nobody starts abusing you instantly. There's sort of an abuse creep. I read this article by a guy who counsels abusers, and he asked them, and they talked about how they wait a certain period of time. They don't start right out, but maybe at about 18 months when you don't have as much contact with your support group and have it when you're deeply invested. So how does that reflect your experience?
One of the hallmarks of abusers and narcissists, and in my case, sociopaths, is that they isolate you. Now, I was really geographically isolated. I had left my family, my friends, my career, everything, all my entire support system. And sometimes they call it love bombing, where they're so nice to you. They're doing all these nice things. And that's how, this is the pattern of an abuser. They're not abusive all the time. They have kind moments. But what happens is that then after you have, you have this kind moment, it's really, really, really nice. You can think of it as a roller coaster. It's really going up. It's really having a lot of fun. And then crash. Then all of a sudden this horrible, way he's treating me. And so it come out of the blue and it's like, what? And so then I would keep, like, it was that kind of a what kind of reaction. And then you think, oh, well, everyone doesn't have a perfect marriage. People get in arguments. People have tempers. We start to nullify while they're demeaning us. So yeah, lots of gifts and vacations and lots of nice things as they swoon you, they give you in, snap at you, throw you out, bring you back in, and then you you're literally, your brain is just ripped into shreds, why it's so hard to get out.
What happened at 18 years that made it make sense to you that this is not normal and this is not okay?
I'm originally from California, so we would come here to visit my family and friends. And I went into a bookstore, just walking, and a title caught my eye. That particular book wasn't a match, but it was called Walking on Eggshells, which is what I felt I was doing. But the bibliography had a whole list of books. And truly, it was from a book that I discovered that it's like, yeah, exactly. Like, whoa. It's like, and I tell you, Morgana, when I started to read that book, I mean, that was an episode in and of itself, because I had to hide the book. I put it in plastic opaque bags. I put it in the back of the guest closet. When I wanted to read it, I took it out, snuck it into the guest bathroom, locked the bathroom door, and then read the book about my life. And it was so painful to realize that this was my life. I didn't want to accept it. But it was really, really hard.
Wow. So how did you get out?
When my daughter was a junior at the American University of Beirut, she came to me one day. She was living at home, and she said, Mom, well, she didn't say it that calmly, let me tell you, but she said, Mom, you got to get me away from my father. You got to get me away from my abusive father. I can't take it anymore.
Ah.
I can't take it anymore, because in the Middle East, custody goes automatically to the father. So there's no custody battle. There's no custody issue. And I would have never left my daughter. Never in a million years would I have left my daughter. So, I figured, well, maybe after she graduates. So, we'd been married 20 years. What's another 4 years for her to graduate? It's like what you do to protect your children. But when she said that, I said, okay. And so within 4 months, I planned the escape of our lives. And this is in a country where where there are electricity cuts, and we're on the 4th floor. This is in a country where he was working pretty much 24/7 at home. And I started to remove things from the house secretly. This is in a time when we were in like a 6-unit condominium building. So I had to make sure that nobody saw me. I had to bring the stuff down. I tell you, when I tell the stories, like, how in the hell did I do this? I don't even know sometimes. But what I did know, Morgana, at that stage was that my life was worth it. I had said, I deserve, my daughter and I deserve to have a happy and joyful life. I only have one life to live. I'm not going to be a martyr. I'm not going to be a martyr. I'm going to live this life. And I didn't know about personal development. I didn't know about mantras. I didn't know about any of that stuff. But those sentences or thoughts, which, you can call a mantra, saved my life.
That inner decision. I'm also noticing that there was a shift where you, for yourself, could live with this for another 4 years, but not for your daughter. And I see that with parents a lot.
Yeah.
Like, we are willing to suffer, but don't touch our kids. And that lit the spark.
Right. And I had to wait till she became major. So she had to be at least 18, because I would have lost her. To this day, he still thinks I brainwashed her and I kidnapped her, to this day. And we've been out 9 years. But, that's what I have to deal with. So then, I did a lot of planning, surreptitious planning, right? My brain was fried. I was on such hypervigilance. And so then I didn't realize all the trauma. I just knew I was on hyper alert. I was literally scared to death. I wouldn't say never, my abuse was primarily emotional, psychological, verbal, financial, sprinkled with a little bit of physical and sexual abuse, but my brain was just spaghetti. My brother helped me think. But because I was organized, I had that planning background from even working in corporate, I wrote out lists of what I had to do, because it was very difficult to think and to coordinate this. But it was, I don't know if you've read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And how
Yeah.
did he get out? He got out in plain sight. He got out where he buried himself in a truckload of dead bodies, right? And that's what I did. I got out with him being right next to me, because we came to the United States on a vacation,
Oh.
except this time my brother met us at the airport, told my husband, Rosie is upset with you. She needs some time away. I was so scared to death. I couldn't even have my brother say to him, she's leaving you forever. I couldn't utter that word. I lost my voice completely. And then we turned around and left him standing in the airport alone.
Well, anybody who has studied domestic abuse also knows that the deadliest danger is when the victim leaves, because this has been such a source of power and even addiction for the abuser. And that's the most dangerous moment. So, whoo, hallelujah at your preparation and the way you did it. Wow.
Yeah, thank you. And that's why, just for your listeners, you never, ever, ever tell your abuser you're leaving ahead of time. Just for what Morgana said, it's extremely dangerous. And the longer we were married, the more violent he became. We, in Lebanon, we had real landmines from decades of war. And it was literally like living with a landmine. I never knew when he would blow up. I mean, sometimes I would just breathe wrong. I'm not joking. It sounds like, it's like, I'd be walking along and just take a deep breath, and then he would just blow up at me. It's like, oh my God, so I was always avoiding him.
So how does that drive you now? Because now you're here. It's been 9 years. You have your business, you have your book, and you also have a mission. What is your mission?
Our mission is to help 1 million women and their children free themselves from domestic violence, free themselves from abuse. And truly, Morgana, what I believe, and when I've spoken to women all over the world, and as we describe our situations to each other, what we were doing is living in terror. So really, to me, domestic abuse and domestic violence don't even come close to describing what a woman goes through, or a child. It's terrorism. So I'm on a mission to end family terrorism and to help these women create a life they deserve. And all women who, even if they've been out of it, to help them really live their life fully. They're still playing small.
Yeah. For so long, this has just been treated legally, like it's trivial, like it's a private matter, like it's an argument. And you're here at the right time, because I think we're just starting to take it seriously. What is the name of your movement?
The Love is Kind movement. The Love is Kind movement. And it's in Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And
why do you call it that?
Because my highest value became kindness, because I didn't live with it, and to me, love is kind, not terrorizing. Real love is kind. It's not humiliating. Real love is kind. It's not demeaning or insulting or rude. That's not love. That's just not love. So we have to bring kindness into the equation. Nobody deserves to live in fear. And living in fear and being terrorized, being made afraid by threats, by anger, by whatever it is, that's terror. That's terror on a personal level. And I'm going to disrupt that whole thinking.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought up that it's not demeaning and that it's not rude, because it doesn't start with the drama. Again, and I'm speaking because, I feel we're all entitled to, have, at least one really bad romantic choice in our life. So I also have the sociopath in my history, like, whoa, how did that happen? Relationship. And That's why I'm so glad you're talking about the rude and the demeaning, because that's kind of what like prepares the soil for planting these poison seeds.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. They cut at your soul, and it's done, and you keep, you make excuses for it. You're just like, oh, he's in a bad mood. And so to me, that now becomes another red flag. So again, for your listeners or whoever, it's just like, if you start to realize that you're making excuses for their behavior, that's a signal that something is wrong. I didn't know that. I just thought, well, I'm going to be the dedicated wife. I'm going to do a good job. I did a good job when I was in corporate. Darn, I'm going to do a good job, in my marriage. What do you mean I can't make that goal? What do you mean I can't fold those shirts the way you told me to fold those shirts? Of course I can. And then they change the goals. Oh, well, I don't really want them folded this way. I want them folded that way.
Well, and one of the points I've seen you make is that this abuse actually changes the victim's brain. Can you talk about that?
Yes. When you're attacked, like you start, when you're being demeaned all the time, and you'll have that bodily reaction. It's always a bodily reaction. But then as things get worse, then, the amygdala starts to kick in, your primitive brain, and it's the fight or flight. But that was created so that when you had danger in front of you, you would be able to react. And then it would be dispersed. But what happens when you're in an abusive situation, it's never turned off. You're in that constant fight or flight. Or freeze. And that's what I did a lot. I froze a lot of fear. And so what happens is that your brain it ends up misfiring. Your body you generate cortisol, and that starts to go through your body. So now you become hypervigilant. And this is why they say, well, why are women all hyped up? Well, that's why we're really hyped up. And so what happens with all the cortisol going through your brain and your body is that the prefrontal cortex, which is where, your more recent brain, where you have your executive thinking, you have your decision making, is non-functioning. It's just like, it shuts down. It's like spaghetti. And why, this is part of the reason why women can't just get out, because this is not, the prefrontal cortex of their brain is just not working. And as people say, well, why did it stay so long? Oh, I don't know, because my brain wasn't working, but I thought it was working. I look normal. Don't I look normal, Morgana? Yeah, but it's not. It's very difficult.
I've also read that for women, there's not only the fight or flight, but there's also the friend response. Like when we're in stress, we get a lot of benefit from connecting with peers, with our sisters. That's why, like we get on the phone with somebody if we haven't been isolated. So what do you provide to help other women get out of this situation?
Well, oh man, this is such a great question, because this is like my other big platform is like, I don't want any other woman to be alone like I was, because they isolated and because they think you should be alone. So, in the programs and the Love is Kind network and in the movement, that's where I'm just asking women, just come and feel like, you're going to be safe, in a safe environment, that you can share your story, that we're here to support you. But the biggest mistake was being alone. But then, Morgana, what I discovered was the shame I had on top of it, the shame that came with it. So my shame made me even more isolated. I created even more isolation than I already had. I was geographically, physically isolated. And then with the shame, I kept it within myself. So those 18 years I was telling you before I knew, nobody knew of my situation. And then at 18 years, because of that, I finally told my brother and my two best friends in the United States. I was married another, 7, whatever the numbers are, 6 years, 5 years, before I left. And then I told 2 more people in Lebanon, because 2 more girlfriends in Lebanon, because I needed their help. So in 25 years, 5 people knew, even
Wow.
then.
Oh, so you were with him for 25 years, not just the 18,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
'Cause my daughter wasn't old enough at 18,
oh,
18 years of marriage.
right. Yeah. Yeah. You had to
And I
wait until
wasn't
she,
gonna, right. And if she wanted to stay for college, it's like, whatever, I've been married 20, let's go for another 4 years if that's what want to do. And I didn't want to put a lot of
yeah.
pressure on her, but
Yeah.
that's what happens is this shame. So I want to break the shame spell that everyone has,
It's
right?
beautiful. And that's a universal, you
Yes.
know. I've heard that over and over again. And I know, you know, firsthand too, that's not what you want to present in the world. So
Yeah.
before picture, shame, fear, abuse, captivity. Now you're a best-selling author. What is your book?
So that book that I got bestseller status was called Conversations That Make a Difference. And I had, this was my story was about the watermelon story. And this is a story where I am sharing, with the readers about how my husband ripped me up and down because I cut the watermelon wrong.
Mm.
And as I shared that story, there's, oh yeah, my husband would get mad if I cut the tomato wrong or the grapefruit wrong. It's like all these, food stories. But it was also a time of processing and forgiveness but for me, and it doesn't mean I have to talk to him and I will ever talk to him, but I needed to release myself. Again, I was creating this other prison for myself, right? Of anger and revenge. And I go, well, that's not taking me anywhere, right? That wasn't clearing who I was. That's not who I am. So to release that. So it was also a story of really moving forward in my life. And it was a big step. And now my daughter and I we're still writing our memoir called 11 Hours to Freedom, which is our story of our escape and our journey of healing, and now this movement to help other women.
Fantastic. So we will have links to your resources for the women and even the men listening.
Yes.
Who need a plan and need support and community to get out into a healthy relationship, which exists.
It does.
Like I was with more than one abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And when you told the watermelon story, early in my dating days with my husband, I tried to cut a watermelon with a steak knife.
Uh-huh.
And when my husband stopped laughing, which took quite a while, he went out and he bought me some grown-up knives.
That's cute.
And that's a healthy response.
Yes, it is. I love that. And that's the other thing I'm helping women learn is what's a healthy relationship? I mean, I am blessed now to be in a wonderful relationship when I never thought I would be. I mean, the guy he's just fantastic. And it's like, some of it is like takes us a little bit longer, but we still do it. And I think that was something else, is not to ever give up on what you deserve.
So do you have any final, and that may have been it, but do you have any final words of encouragement just to close this conversation?
I'd like to share that, you deserve to be treated with kindness. And usually that really will start with treating yourself with kindness. And sometimes that means making some tough decisions that are going to be kind to you. But you deserve to be treated with kindness. And always remember that.
And please, 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 if you're in pain or maybe wondering if this relationship may not be quite right for you, one of the most helpful things a friend ever told me in my last relationship like that was, yeah, relationships are hard, but they're not that hard. So if you're in one of those that hard relationships, I really, really encourage you to reach out
Mm-hmm.
to Rosie's Love is Kind Facebook group. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the link will be posted at morganaradio.com. If you're listening on iTunes, this has all been videoed. There will be show notes to, that kind of boil down some of the salient points and links for you to get your plan and your support so you can get your life back. Thank you so much, Rosie. This has really been a gift.
Thank you, Morgana, for having me.
That concludes our conversation for today. You can get all the links that we talked about and lots of resources at morganaradio.com. And as always, if you like what you heard, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the Morgana Radio podcast. Your instructions on how to do this are also at morganaradio.com. That's it for now. I will see you next week with another fascinating guest expert on Morgana Radio.